The dried pasta in that box is made from just two things: ground wheat and water. No egg, no yeast, nothing else. Yet it survives for years in your cupboard and comes in hundreds of different shapes. That is the strange truth behind how pasta is made, and it is one of the most interesting facts hiding on a supermarket shelf. So how do two plain ingredients become a golden shape that lasts longer than almost any fresh food? It starts with a very special wheat. Most bread uses soft wheat. Pasta uses the hardest wheat on earth, called durum. Its very name means hard. This grain is so tough it resists the mill. Crushed, it does not turn to flour. It breaks into coarse golden grains, like tiny beads of sand. That golden grit is semolina. Rub it between your fingers and it feels sharp, nothing like the soft powder in a bread bag. The semolina is mixed with water, and that is all. 2 ingredients, and the dough begins. There is another kind of pasta, made with eggs, soft and eaten within days. But the pasta in the box is the tough, traveling kind. Hard wheat and water, built to last. For all its machines, the recipe has barely changed in centuries. The genius is not in what goes in, it is in what happens next. But this is not a soft, pillowy dough. It is stiff, dense, and stubborn. There is barely any water in it, no yeast to puff it up. It does not rise or breathe. It feels closer to modeling clay than to bread. The mixing hides a clever step too. It happens under a vacuum, with the air pulled out. Trapped bubbles of air would leave pale flaws and weak spots. Take the air away, and the dough turns dense, smooth, and strong. So how does a lump of stiff clay become a delicate, hollow tube? The answer is brute force. The dough is forced through a thick metal plate riddled with holes. This plate is called a die, and it is the true secret of pasta. A giant screw drives the dough forward under crushing pressure. The dough has no choice. It squeezes through the holes and comes out the other side as a shape. The pressure in there is enormous, strong enough to crush the dough into any form. All that force makes heat, so the machine is cooled the whole time. Too warm, and the pasta would start to cook before it ever left the die. And the shape of the hole is the shape of the pasta. Change the die, and you change everything. A plain round hole makes spaghetti. A star-shaped slot makes a fluted, ridged tube. One machine, one dough, endless forms. There are hundreds of these shapes, and each one has a job. Ridges and curves are built to trap sauce. Thin strands cook in minutes. Fat tubes cradle a hearty filling. The shape is never just for looks. And a single fine die can be worth a small fortune. Makers guard them, polish them, and hand them down. Lose the die, and you lose the shape itself. I often wonder where in the world you are hearing this. A kitchen in Italy, of course, but maybe a flat in Sweden, or a house somewhere in Nigeria. Pasta has quietly traveled almost everywhere. So I am curious which country you are watching from tonight. Not the town, the country. Now, back to the machine. Some shapes need a hidden trick, a hole running through the middle. To make a hollow tube, a tiny pin sits right in the center of each opening. The dough flows around it, and the pin leaves an empty channel down the core. That is how a solid dough becomes a hollow macaroni. But the die does something you cannot even see. It secretly controls the taste. The finest dies are made of bronze. As the dough scrapes through bronze, the metal drags at it, leaving the surface slightly rough. That roughness matters more than it should. A rough surface grabs and holds sauce, so every bite carries flavor. A smooth, slippery pasta lets the sauce slide off and pool at the bottom of the plate. So two pieces of pasta from the very same dough can taste completely different. It all comes down to the texture of their skin. Here is your choice, then. Rough pasta that clings to every drop, or smooth pasta that stays sleek and shiny. One word, rough or smooth. Write it below. Once the shape leaves the die, sharp blades sweep across the openings. They slice the endless ribbons into exact lengths, over and over, faster than the eye can follow. Long strands are draped over rods, hanging like golden hair. Short shapes take a different ride. Penny and shells tumble across long, trembling belts, drying as they slowly travel. The long strands hang in stately rows, like sheets on a line. And now comes the step that decides everything: drying. This sounds boring. It is the hardest part of all. The pasta leaves the die soft and full of water. To survive in a box, it must lose almost all of that moisture without cracking apart. Dry it too fast, and the outside hardens while the inside is still damp. The shape splits and shatters. A whole batch ruined. So the pasta is dried slowly, gently, in warm rooms with carefully controlled air. Thick shapes can take most of a day to dry all the way through. By the end, almost no water is left inside. The pasta turns hard as a dry twig, light and hollow sounding when it taps the tray. For centuries, one town near Naples was famous for this. Its streets caught the perfect mix of warm mountain air and sea breeze. Makers hung their pasta outdoors, right in the street, letting the wind do the work. The whole town smelled of drying wheat. And this slow drying is the real magic trick. It is how pasta cheats time. Strip almost all the water out of a food, and the tiny microbes that cause rot have nothing to live on. They simply cannot grow. That is why a box of dried pasta can sit in your cupboard for a year or more and still be perfectly good. Fresh dough would spoil in days. Dried, it becomes nearly immortal. Think about the paradox in that. The most fragile thing, soft, wet dough, is turned into one of the most durable foods in your kitchen. No freezer, no cans, no chemicals, only wheat, water, and patience. That toughness is exactly why pasta conquered the world. It could be packed onto ships and carried across whole oceans without spoiling. A food that survives a year in the dark can travel almost anywhere, and it did. And the golden color is another quiet clue. It is not added. It comes straight from the durum wheat itself, rich in natural pigment. The deeper the gold, the better the grain. That hard wheat gives one final gift. It holds its bite. Cooked right, good pasta stays firm at the center, never falling to mush. Italians have a name for that firmness: al dente, meaning to the tooth. How strange this whole process, once seemed, comes through in a famous prank. A respected television program once aired a report showing farmers harvesting strands of spaghetti from tall trees. They called it the annual spaghetti harvest. And people believed it. Viewers rang in, asking how they could grow their own spaghetti tree at home. It sounds silly now, but it shows how mysterious the making of pasta really was, hidden away inside those humble factories. So look at the whole impossible journey in a single piece. The hardest wheat on the planet, smashed into golden grit, mixed with nothing but water, forced through a metal mold under enormous pressure, its surface roughened on purpose to hold sauce, then dried so slowly it can outlast the seasons. All of that so a simple shape can carry flavor perfectly and wait patiently in the dark until you are hungry. I still cannot get my head around one of these, that the rough skin of good pasta is shaped on purpose, just to hold the sauce. Which fact surprised you the most?